Little Sandra May lived with her mama and her daddy on a little farm in the bluegrass hills of the state of Kentucky. And there was a lot of love there. But this is a Halloween story, and tragedy struck. And one day, little Sandra May's mama got the influenza, and she got very sick, and she died. And that just left little Sandra May and her daddy. And they were real sad for a long time. And then, one day a miracle happened. And Sandra May's daddy met a lady. And they fell in love, and they got married. And now Sandra May had a stepmama and her daddy, and they lived together as a family. And there was a lot of love there. But this is a Halloween story. So tragedy struck again. And one day, Sandra May's daddy was out a-hunting for some food. And he went out into the woods with his rifle and got bit by a poisonous snake. And then he died. And that was so sad. And that just left Sandra May and her stepmama. Now, I don't know what it was, whether it was the stress of having to raise that child all by herself, or the fact that she had lost the only man that she loved in such a short period of time. But Sandra May's stepmama went from being a sweet, kind, generous lady to being a mean, witchy, ugly, lazy stepmama. And she made Sandra May do everything that she didn't want to do. Sandra May, she'd say, "Yes, ma'am. You see them dishes? They dirty. Wash 'em." "Yes, ma'am." Sandra May went in the kitchen and she washed up them dishes. "Sandra May, yes, ma'am. You see that floor is dirty?" "Yes, ma'am." "Wash it." Sandra May had to go and sweep the floor, and then wash it. "Sandra May, yes, ma'am. You see them clothes are dirty?" "Yes, ma'am." "Go out there and wash them." Sandra May had to take the big old laundry basket out, fill the tub up with water, put in her washboard — they didn't have a washing machine — and wash everything by hand. Wring it out and hang it on the line. "Sandra May, yes, ma'am. Them animals need to be fed." "Yes, ma'am." Sandra May had to go outside, feed the chickens, tend to the goats, throw slop in the pig's trough. "Sandra May, yes, ma'am. Them walls is dirty. Paint 'em." "Yes, ma'am." "Sandra May, yes, ma'am. Come on in here. Fix this broken window." "Yes, ma'am." Sandra made this, Sandra made that. She had that poor child working and a-working. Then one day, that mean and lazy stepmother called Sandra May down. "Sandra May, look out that kitchen window. Do you see our little garden out there?" "Yes, ma'am." "You see that garden is full of weeds. We ain't gonna have one bit of food for harvest if you don't get out there and get every one of them weeds up." "Yes, ma'am." Sandra May had to go out and pull all the weeds out of the garden. Now, if you've ever had to weed a garden, you'll know you've got to get down on your hands and knees and pull those weeds, and some of those weeds are not easy to pull out. And she was pulling weeds, and it was hot. And while she was pulling those weeds, Sandra May started thinking, and she started feeling, and she started just emoting and getting all upset because of what had happened to her. And this was her life now. And something just welled up in Sandra May to the point where she just couldn't take it anymore. And she made a decision to run away. And she ran into the woods. Now you or me, we may not do that. We might have planned our escape. We might have taken some food with us and thought about when we would leave, but not Sandra May. And we might have gone into the woods with a friend and figured out how to go through the woods and what to look for so we don't get lost. But not Sandra May. She didn't have anything like that. And when she was upset, she just took off into them woods and she got lost. Just like that. And Sandra May was walking through the woods and the brambles were pulling at her dress and pulling at her apron and grabbing up her hair. Oh, and she was hungry and her stomach was making those noises that stomachs make when they haven't had anything to eat. And Sandra May was walking around for a long time. And then she started to smell something sweet and it made her mouth water. And so she started walking towards the smell. And as she walked, the smell got sweeter and sweeter. And then she started to walk out of the woods into a clearing where the grass was much, much shorter. And then there was a little pebbled walkway. And it was very narrow and it was kind of windy. And she started walking on that walkway. And then she came out to the most amazing house she had ever seen. It was a gingerbread house. The roof was scalloped like this and decorated with pink icing. And the sides of the house, there was stuck in them. She thought it was little stones at first, but then when she walked up to it, she realized there was jelly beans and juji fruit beans, and they were stuck in there. And then she looked at the doorknob, and the doorknob was made out of a red candied apple. And she looked through the window, and she could see that the curtains were tied back with long strawberry red Twizzlers. And then she stepped back, and she could see that the whole frame of the window was made out of a chocolate. And that made Sandra May, oh, that made her mouth water, and she just couldn't help herself, and she found herself reaching up to that windowsill, and she just broke off a piece and popped it in her mouth. And that chocolate tasted good. And as she was just about to reach for another little bit, the door opened to the gingerbread house. And a woman appeared, a little old lady. She had little white hair and a little apron over her dress. And she called out to Sandra May, "Girl, what you doing eating my house?" Oh, I'm so sorry, ain't it?" said Sandra May. It was just that I'm so hungry." And the woman said, "I guess so. Out here eating a person's house. You must be hungry. Well, come on in." Well, Sandra May followed the woman inside the house. And the lady sat her down at a table. And she said, "Well, you just wait right here. I'm going to help you." And she went over to the kitchen, and pots and pans and spatulas started flipping up and flying around the room and landed on plates. Food appeared. And the woman brought her over a big plate of flapjacks with butter and syrup melted all over. And then she brought over another plate. She brought over a big plate filled with sausage and bacon, and it was turkey bacon because she was trying to watch her weight. And she sat that down. And then she gave her a piece of cherry pie. And she gave her some scrambled eggs with some cheese melted on top and some grits, because that's how people eat in Kentucky. And a big glass of milk. "Well, help yourself," she said. And Sandra May said, "Thank you so much." And she got busy and started eating. And when she was done, the woman snapped her fingers just like this. And the dishes seemed to just disappear. And then the woman said to Sandra May, "Well, what you doing out in these woods all by yourself? And Sandra May told her all about everything that had happened. Told her about her mom getting the influenza and then dying. And her daddy getting bit by a snake and he dying. Said the old lady. That is sure not pitiful. And then about how her nice, sweet stepmama turned into being a mean, lazy stepmama. Said the old woman. You've had a hard life. And Sandra May said, yes, ma'am, I have. Well, the lady got busy making Sandra May feel a little bit better. She taught her how to knit with 2 needles and some yarn. And they played some card games, and she let Sandra May win, and it was so much fun. And then they were telling jokes to each other. And after a while, Sandra May felt a lot better. But then the woman said, well, now listen, I think it's time for you to go home. No, said Sandra May, please don't make me go. I don't want to ever go back there again. She said, yeah, no, here, hush up now. I think things are going to be a lot better from here on in. But I'm going to give you something to take with you. And the woman reached up on the shelf. And she took down a jar. She reached her hand in and pulled out a little gingerbread boy cookie. And she said to Sandra May, now here, you take this here cookie. And after you eat it, you're going to feel a whole lot better. Now, Sandra May had been raised right, and she took the cookie, even though she was thinking to herself, I don't see how this cookie is going to make my life any better. But she was very gracious, and she said, thank you. And she wrapped the cookie up in a napkin and put it in her apron pocket. Then the lady said, all right now, come on, I'm going to take you home. And she took Sandra May by the hand, and they started walking. Back down through the narrow, windy path and through the clearing and into the woods. And you know, Sandra May was home in no time flat. And just as they came out to the clearing of Sandra May's farm, she was about to turn to her new friend and give her a big hug, and the woman had disappeared. She was gone. Just like that. Sandra May went back over to the garden, and she picked up the rake and put it back in the shed because she knew how to handle tools. And then she went back into the kitchen, and there was her wicked old stepmama sitting at the table. Sitting right in front of her on the table was a big, fresh loaf of bread. And when Sandra May came into the kitchen, the stepmother said, Sandra May, I don't know where you been, but I know you ain't been in that garden getting out them weeds. And don't think you're going to get any of this freshly baked bread, my young lady. The only thing you're going to get is this. And the stepmama reached behind the table and pulled out a long switch. Now, a switch is what people used back then to give their kids a spanking. But it was a bad spanking. And it was a long kind of a piece of a tree is what it was, like a long stick, but it was very bendy. And if she hit you, whoo, that would hurt. And Sandra May said, oh no, and she ran up the stairs and closed her bedroom door. And she had her feet pushed up against the door like this and her back pushed up against the bed. And the stepmom was calling up to her, Sandra May, you better come out here, young lady. But she was lazy, like I said, and she got tired. And so she went back downstairs. You have to come downstairs sometime. Sandra May was so upset. She threw herself onto the bed and she just started to cry. Oh, she cried and she cried. She cried about her mama and her daddy and now her new friend, and she thought she'd never see her again. She cried till she was cried out. And then she rolled over on her side. She felt something. And she reached in her apron pocket and pulled out a napkin, and there was the gingerbread boy cookie that her friend, the old lady, had given her. And she took that cookie in her hand, and she swung her feet around the side of the bed. She thought to herself, you know, I could use some sweetness about now. And so Sandra May took that gingerbread boy cookie and she bit off the arm. And it tasted pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, the mean old lazy stepmama was sitting at the table, and she was just about to give herself a little slice of bread when that knife flew out of her hand and started spinning around the room. And that knife came down and went whack! Cut off the woman's arm. But meanwhile, upstairs in the bedroom, Sandra May, she took that gingerbread boy cookie and she bit off the other arm. It tastes pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, that knife was spinning and twirling and whirling, and that knife came down, and that knife went whack! Cut off the other arm. But meanwhile, upstairs in the bedroom, Sandra May, she took that gingerbread boy cookie and she bit off the leg. It tasted pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, that knife went zipping and zagging and twisting and turning, and that knife came down and went whack! Cut off the stepmom's leg. But meanwhile, upstairs in the bedroom, Sandra May, she took the gingerbread boy cookie and she bit off the other leg. It tasted pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, that knife went twisting and turning and swirling and swimming, and that knife came down and went whack! Cut off the other leg. But meanwhile, upstairs in the bedroom, Sandra May, she took the gingerbread boy cookie and she bit off the head. Tastes pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, that knife went humming and buzzing and twisting and turning, and that knife came down and went whack! But meanwhile, upstairs in the bedroom, Sandra May, she took the rest of that gingerbread boy cookie and she gobbled the whole thing up. Tasted pretty good. But meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, that knife went spinning and turning and flipping and flying, and that knife came down and it went whack! Whack, whack! Whack, 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 whack. Whack, 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 whack. Whack, 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 whack. Whack, whack, whack. And there was the stepmom in teeny tiny itty bitty pieces. No blood, just pieces. And then, after a while, Sandra May came downstairs and she saw those pieces on the floor. But she knew what to do. She went and got a broom and a dustpan, and she swept up all those pieces. Shh, 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 shh. And she took them outside and she buried them. And then she went back inside. And you want to know something? It was just like that old lady said. After she ate that cookie, she felt a whole lot better.